only for it to end because of one miscalculated move. Sadly, since sports injuries have a long history of ending careers, there are several athletes out there who don't really need to imagine. Thus, to prevent contestants from harming themselves as well as their opponents, particularly in sports like WWE or F1, look at some moves that are either forbidden to gymnasts or have gone out of fashion. Number 8. Back-to-back tumbling. Tumbling is one of the few things that we get to see during a gymnast's floor routine. In fact, a floor routine needs to have at least 3 tumbling passes. The said passes are usually performed diagonally to maximize the space for the performance, and simply put, involve the contestants tumbling from one corner of the floor to another. You might have even seen certain cartoon characters, for instance, Harley Quinn from Batman, doing this movement. We know it's a weird reference, but it comes really close to an authentic tumble. Anywho, the passes also need to include a combination of certain skills or elements, the hardest of which is usually saved for the finale, and thankfully doesn't involve bashing somebody's head in with a mallet. Now, even though tumbling isn't officially banned, it's become outdated over the past few years, with only a handful of gymnasts who are still performing it. The major reason behind its current unpopularity is how it results in a markdown from the judges, seeing that they have become more interested in skills that require more energy and can be performed on their own. All things considered, it still plays a huge role in a gymnast's development and is, therefore, frequently employed during training sessions, especially floor routine training. At number 7, belly beats. If you really think about it, gymnastics is nothing short of a science experiment, especially the way that gymnasts sometimes have to get momentum down to a science for their routines to succeed. However, don't be fooled. Belly beating has nothing to do with the digestive system. In fact, belly beating, aka beating the bar, is a move that involves hitting one's hip on the low bar in order to gain a power-up for the next skill that the gymnasts have lined up for themselves. Now, although this technique hasn't been prohibited, it poses a risk to the contestant's hip bone, especially if they miss the correct spot while going for the low bar. On the contrary, if executed correctly, the move is almost painless. Still, to lessen the risks as much as possible, and furthermore, to make things easier, associations have launched widened bars in recent years. The introduction of these wider bars has thankfully eliminated the beating part by providing more room for flight and momentum. Sadly, however, they've also eliminated the flow and the rhythm that the move would lend to a routine. Speaking of rhythm and momentum, the next move was performed for almost the same purpose. Now at number 6, multiple front handsprings, sensual demanding ones. Among these simpler initial moves were the multiple front handsprings, which are sitting at number 5, most vault skills. Vaults haven't been banned, and neither have they gone out of fashion. They've rather been reserved for lower level competitions or children's competitions because of how easy they normally are. While gymnast associations have altered the move, which originally involved jumping over a horse-like form, to make it a lot more difficult, back in the day, gymnasts themselves had their twists on it. That is to say, instead of doing a simple handspring, they'd sometimes go into a pike position before landing, as opposed to touching their toes as usual. This take on the move, which was popularly known as the Yamashita, after the 2-times gold-winning Japanese gymnast Haruhiro Yamashita, is where they'd throw a half twist into their regular routines on top of a handspring as well. As such, the vault has seen a number of improvements over the course of time. This is why some of the vaults today, namely Chengs, double-twisting Yuchenkos, or Aminars, are so much harder to undertake than their predecessors like the Yamashita or Tsukahara. Next, we have the Komanechi dismount. Among some of the techniques that went out of style following the introduction of newer, more challenging ones is the Komanechi dismount. This technique, which seems like a toe front in the beginning, ends in a backflip instead of a forward salto that's typical of toe fronts. Popularized by Nadia Comaneci back in the 1970s, the move had quite a good run before it was replaced by more modern skills that naturally carry more scores because of their increased difficulty. It had a pretty similar fate to the next move, which when looked at closely comes off as rather funny. At number 3, the Silivas mount. Christened after the Romanian gymnast Daniela Silivas, this move includes both a shoulder and chest stand, with the shoulder stand being performed with the legs in a straddle position. If you look at it long enough, it starts to seem clownish instead of artistic, but in spite of how funny it looks and how unpopular it's become today, it helped Silivas bag a gold medal back in the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games. However, nowadays it's not only avoided for its lower value on the scorecards, but also because it can easily result in an injury. In particular, Alicia Sacramoni's fall in the 2008 Beijing Olympics further pushed these tricky mounting techniques to the margins of the gymnastics realm. Instead, gymnasts are now advised to use simpler mounting techniques to avoid getting injured early on in their routine. As far as banned moves are concerned, the next one has a backstory that's truly a tearjerker. And then we have rollout skills. As the name indicates, rollout skills are the skills that involve rolling out of a flip instead of completing it to land on one's feet. While gymnasts have been debarred from performing most rollout skills, the Thomas Salto, popularized by Kurt Thomas in the US Championship of '79, is by far the most lethal take on them. Therefore, it was removed from the code of points for both men and women. Let's briefly explain why, using one of the most tragic examples of its application. Basically, this technique, which requires a gymnast to perform a back salto with 3/4 flips and 1.5 twists, concludes with them rolling out before finally standing up, i.e. if they manage to stand up at all. To elaborate, this move demands a lot of precision while landing, the absence of which can result in severe injuries, like in the case of Elena Mukina, who was somewhat of a gymnastics prodigy, met a tragic accident weeks before the 1980 Moscow Championship while practicing for this very move, unfortunately becoming one of the first few athletes whose fate led to the move finally being prohibited. Nonetheless, while it left Mukina paralyzed in all 4 of her limbs and stimulated her premature death in 2006, it was successfully pulled off by several gymnasts before the ban came into effect, and even after it. For example, Tatiana Ignatova, another Soviet gymnast, completed the move in a 1992 championship. Still, the fact that she later removed it from her routine testifies to the dangers and near impossibility. Sitting at number 1, the Korbut Flip. It's quite rare for athletes to exhibit such mastery that it ends up getting both highly recognized and swiftly prohibited within the same day. However, that's exactly what happened in the case of Olga Korbut. Korbut, who birthed the Korbut Flip with her awe-striking backward release move in the 1972 Summer Olympics, has become the stuff of legends among aspiring and established gymnasts both. The move, which was undertaken on uneven bars, involved her standing on the top bar, from where she then did a backflip before grabbing onto it again and landing in a straddle on the low bar. Although it dropped a lot of jaws as it happened, Olga was barred from performing it again because of its high capacity for risks. It was furthermore outlawed because standing on the high bar disrupts the flow of the routine. Olga, who was quite dismayed at this decision, asserted that the fear of injuries shouldn't get in the way of a gymnast's right to expression. To quote, "In effect, I am asked to revise my views on gymnastics without being given any choice in the matter. Gymnastics is about expression." All in all, she was always the one for dangerous moves and continued to dazzle the crowds with all manners of daring, even after the ban on her legendary flip, also sometimes called the dead loop. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think of athletes that attempt outlawed moves just to stand out? Would you do something like that if you were a sports person? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.